It was just another Tuesday afternoon at Ellen's studio, the familiar blue and white lights casting their warm glow across the polished stage. The audience buzzed with anticipation, that electric energy that always filled the air before taping began. Ellen DeGeneres adjusted her light blue blazer, her signature blonde hair catching the studio lights, as she prepared for what seemed like an ordinary show. But sometimes, ordinary moments become extraordinary when courage finds its voice. In the third row, partially hidden behind his mother's shoulder, sat 11-year-old Jake Martinez. His small hands clutched an old iPhone with a cracked screen, the kind of device that had clearly seen better days. His mother, Sophia, kept glancing at him with eyes that held a mixture of hope and heartbreak that only parents of sick children truly understand. Jake had written to the Ellen Show 3 months ago, his handwriting careful and deliberate, the way children write when they know their words matter more than they've ever mattered before. The letter had made its way through hundreds of others, but something about his simple request had stopped the producers cold. "Dear Ellen," it had read, "my dad is sick and he can't play guitar anymore, but he still tries. I want to play his songs for you because they make me feel like he's not dying." The pre-show energy was infectious, as always. Ellen worked the crowd with her natural warmth, her ability to make 300 strangers feel like old friends evident in every gesture. She high-fived audience members, posed for selfies, and created those spontaneous moments of joy that had defined her show for nearly 2 decades. But as she scanned the audience, something made her pause. In the third row, she noticed Jake, his small frame almost lost in the oversized Lakers jersey he wore. There was something in his posture, the way he held that phone like it contained something precious and fragile, that caught her attention. "We've got a special guest with us today," Ellen announced, her voice carrying that warmth that had made her America's favorite daytime host. "Jake Martinez is here with his mom, Sophia, and Jake, I hear you've got something pretty special to share with us." The camera found Jake, and as it zoomed in, viewers could see what Ellen had noticed. This wasn't the excitement of a typical young audience member. This was something deeper. Jake's eyes held a seriousness that seemed too heavy for someone who should be worried about homework and video games. Jake raised his hand slowly, and when Ellen nodded encouragingly, he stood up. His voice, when it came, was steady but quiet, carrying across the studio with the kind of clarity that makes everyone listen. "Ellen," he said, "my dad is David Martinez. He's been playing guitar since he was my age, and he taught me everything I know about music." Ellen's expression softened. Something in Jake's tone, the way he said "is" instead of "was," told her this story was still being written. "That's beautiful, Jake. Is your dad here with us today?" Jake's composure flickered for just a moment. "No, he's at City of Hope Hospital. He has pancreatic cancer, and the doctors say," Jake's voice caught, but he steadied himself with the kind of strength that children shouldn't have to possess. "The doctors say we should spend time together while we can." The studio grew quieter, not the manufactured quiet of a TV moment, but the organic silence that happens when 300 people collectively hold their breath. Ellen felt something shift inside her chest. In 18 years of hosting, she'd learned to recognize when a moment was about to transcend television. This was one of those times. "Jake," she said gently, walking closer to where he stood, "what's on that phone you're holding?" Jake looked down at the device in his hands, then back up at Ellen. "My dad recorded some songs for me. He can't really play anymore because the medicine makes his hands shake, but he still tries. He said music is the only way he knows how to tell me he loves me." Behind the cameras, producers exchanged glances. This wasn't scripted, this wasn't planned, this was real life, intersecting with television in the most profound way possible. Ellen made a decision that would define not just this episode, but her understanding of what her platform could really mean. "Jake," she said, Would you like to play one of those songs for us? Jake nodded, his small fingers swiping across the cracked screen with the practiced ease of someone who had listened to these recordings countless times. This one is called Strong Like Jake. He wrote it for me last month. The audio quality was poor, recorded on a phone in a hospital room, with the ambient noise of medical equipment humming in the background. But when David Martinez's voice filled the studio, weak but determined, singing to his son, the imperfections became irrelevant. Strong like Jake, brave like Jake, even when the world feels like it's breaking, I see the man you're gonna be, and I'm proud, so proud of you, my boy. Ellen felt tears gathering in her eyes, but it was what happened next that broke her completely. Jake began to sing along, his clear young voice harmonizing with his father's recorded one. He knew every word, every inflection, every pause where his dad had stopped to catch his breath. As he sang, the audience began to understand they weren't just watching a performance, they were witnessing a child holding on to his father through the only medium that felt strong enough to carry that much love. When the song ended, the silence was profound. Ellen walked over to Jake, and for the first time in her hosting career, she was speechless. This 11-year-old boy had just demonstrated something about courage and love that she, at 62, was still learning. Jake, she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard on this show. Jake looked up at her, and in that moment, Ellen saw not just a child, but an old soul carrying a burden too heavy for small shoulders. He made me 15 songs, Jake said quietly. One for every year until I turn 26. He said that way, even when he's gone, he can still sing me happy birthday. The studio fell completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause, as if the machinery itself understood the sacredness of what had just been shared. Ellen knelt down to Jake's eye level, her movements slow and deliberate. When she spoke, it wasn't to the audience or the cameras. It was to this brave boy who had just shared the most precious thing he owned with a room full of strangers. Jake, your dad isn't just teaching you about music, he's teaching you about love. And the way you just sang with him, even though he's not here, that tells me you're learning the lesson perfectly. Jake's composure finally cracked. The tears he'd been holding back began to fall. And Ellen, without hesitation, wrapped him in the kind of hug that transcends entertainment and becomes pure human connection. But Ellen wasn't finished. She stood up, still keeping one hand on Jake's shoulder, and addressed the audience directly. You know what we're going to do, she said, her voice stronger now, filled with purpose. We're going to make sure David Martinez knows that his music, his love, his legacy is being heard. She turned back to Jake. Can we call your dad right now? Jake nodded eagerly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Ellen's production team, without being asked, had already arranged for the call to be connected to the hospital. When David Martinez's face appeared on the studio's giant screen, weak but smiling, the entire audience rose their feet. Here was a man facing the unthinkable, who had found a way to package his love for his son into something that would outlast his physical presence. David, Ellen said, speaking directly to the screen, your son just shared your music with all of us, and I need you to know something. You're not just a father, you're a poet, a musician, and a teacher. And Jake is everything you hoped he would be. David's eyes filled with tears as he looked at his son through the screen. Hey, buddy, he said, his voice weak but warm. How did it sound? Perfect, Dad, Jake replied. It sounded perfect. What happened next went beyond television, beyond entertainment, beyond anything Ellen had ever experienced in her studio. She made an announcement that would change everything. David, Jake, I want you both to know that we're going to do something special. I'm going to connect you with some of the most talented musicians in the world. We're going to take your songs, your beautiful songs, and we're going to help you record them properly. Professional studio, full band, whatever you want. Because this music, this love you've created, it deserves to be preserved the way it was meant to be heard. The audience erupted in applause, but Ellen held up her hand. She wasn't finished. And Jake, every birthday for the next 15 years, you're going to get a new recording, your dad's voice, his guitar, his love, all of it professionally recorded so that when you're 26 years old and listening to your birthday song, it's going to sound like he's right there in the room with you. Through the screen, they could see David sobbing with gratitude. Jake looked up at Ellen with an expression of wonder that seemed to age him backwards, making him look like the 11-year-old child he was supposed to be allowed to be. But the most powerful moment was yet to come. Ellen looked directly into the camera, speaking not to her studio audience, but to the millions of viewers who would see this later. Music, she said, is the only thing I know that can carry love across time. David Martinez is teaching us all something about what it means to be a parent, about what it means to love someone so much that you find a way to stay with them, even when you can't stay. She turned back to Jake. And you, young man, you're teaching us about courage, about what it means to honor someone's love by keeping it alive. The episode ended with Jake and his father singing together across the distance between the studio and the hospital, their voices creating a harmony that seemed to bridge the gap between presence and absence, between love and loss. 3 weeks later, David Martinez passed away peacefully at City of Hope Hospital. But before he died, he had spent 5 days in Ellen's private recording studio, working with Grammy-winning producers and musicians to create 15 songs for his son, each one professionally recorded, each one a love letter from a father to the man his son would become. The story doesn't end there. Jake's birthday songs became legendary. Each year, Ellen would surprise him on his birthday with the new recording, sometimes in person, sometimes through video calls when he was older, and away at college. The songs documented not just a father's love, but a boy's journey into manhood, guided by the voice of the man who believed in him most. When Jake turned 18, Ellen surprised him with something unexpected. David had recorded extra songs, songs for graduation, for heartbreak, for success, for all the moments a father wishes he could be there to guide his child through. Today, Jake Martinez is a music therapist working with children in hospitals. He carries his father's guitar, same one that shook in David's hands during those final months, and he plays those 15 songs for families facing their own impossible goodbyes. The cracked iPhone still sits on Jake's desk, though he doesn't need it anymore. The professionally recorded versions are beautiful, but sometimes he still listens to those original recordings with their imperfect audio and background noise of medical equipment, because those recordings capture something the studio versions can't quite replicate, the sound of a father refusing to let love be silenced by loss. Ellen learned something that day that changed how she approached every show after. She learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't entertain people. It's witness their love, honor their courage, and use whatever platform you have to make sure their story doesn't end with goodbye. But there's more to this story that viewers never saw, moments that happened after the cameras stopped rolling. After the episode finished taping, Ellen sat with Jake and Sophia in her private office behind the stage. Jake, Ellen said, I need to ask you something. How are you really doing with all of this? Jake was quiet for a long moment. In the studio, he had been performing on some level, being strong for everyone watching. But here, in this quiet space, he could just be 11 years old. Sometimes I get really angry, he admitted. Not at Dad, but at everything. Why does this have to happen? Why can't the doctors fix him? Ellen nodded, recognizing the universal struggle of children forced to grow up too quickly. You know what, Jake? Being angry about this makes perfect sense. This isn't fair at all. But here's what I learned today. Ellen continued, watching you up there. Your dad found a way to give you something that cancer can't touch. Every time you sing one of his songs, he's not gone. He's right there with you. Jake looked up at her with an expression that mixed child and old soul. Do you really think the studio recordings will sound as good as the ones on my phone? Ellen smiled with both sadness and hope. Jake, they're going to sound different, professional, clear, beautiful. But I'll tell you a secret. She leaned forward. Those recordings on your phone, don't ever get rid of those. Those are the ones with your dad's real breath in them. The studio versions will be for sharing with the world. The phone recordings are just for you. 3 days later, Ellen drove to City of Hope Hospital to meet David Martinez in person. She found him in the music therapy room, thin and weak, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. Ellen DeGeneres, he said, I can't believe you're here. David Martinez, she replied. I had to come meet the man who raised someone that brave. They talked for hours. David shared his story, immigrating from Mexico with dreams of music, meeting Sophia becoming a father, and how it redefined every song he'd ever written. The recording studio sessions, David said, mean everything to me, but I'm scared I won't be strong enough to get through all 15 songs, or that Jake will only remember how sick I was. Ellen took David's hand. David, when Jake sang with your recording, he wasn't remembering sickness. He was remembering love. Your voice carries more love than most people express in a lifetime. The recording sessions took place over the following weeks. Ellen watched David summon strength. He didn't have to sing lullabies for a son who would someday have children of his own. The session for Jake's 21st birthday song was the hardest. Jake, he sang, his voice trembling, by now you're a man, and I hope you know that every choice I made was because I wanted to see the man you'd become. I'm proud of you, son. When David passed away, 3 weeks later, Jake held the guitar his father had used in those final sessions. Ellen spoke at the funeral, not as a celebrity, but as someone who had witnessed the power of a father's love to transcend mortality. David Martinez taught us that legacy isn't about the time you have, it's about the love you pour into that time. Every song he wrote for Jake is proof that love is stronger than anything. Years later, when people ask Ellen about the most meaningful moment in her career, she doesn't hesitate. It's not the awards or celebrity interviews, it's the afternoon when an 11-year-old boy taught her that courage sounds like a child singing along with his dying father's voice. Music, it turns out, really is the only thing that can carry love across time. And sometimes, cracked iPhone and an 11-year-old's courage are all you need to prove that love is stronger than anything else in this world.